All right. I want to welcome y'all to another episode of As a Man Thinks podcast. This episode just came to me. I want to first by starting off saying that I had a death in my family. My grandmother just recently passed, and she was the matriarch of our family. She was the last sibling that was in her family. As far as her brothers and sisters. And so she had caught COVID maybe a year and a half in beginning of 2020. And she never bounced back. She didn't have COVID. I mean, she bounced back from the COVID, but, she was bedridden after that and just things happened. So point is, my grandfather had passed about 3 years earlier, 3.5 years, somewhere around there like that. And he left a house. They had a house that they had bought, and just this is going to be a tough subject because they put things in place. My grandfather put things in place. My grandmother needed some care, because she was bedridden. She needed nurses, to come in and care for her. And our family didn't have the finances to all chip in to pitch in for the care, the time, the effort, as far as just people going over there or whatever, that just didn't happen. Sorry, I keep looking around, looking for this fan remote because I see that this fan is steadily going around, but I can't find it. Anyway, so she passed a week ago, and some things happened, where the house is now going to be up for sale. Some money is owed from a loan that got taken out, and it's got like 60 days to pay it back, or 45 days or whatever. And it's a sad situation because my grandfather always told me that he wanted to keep the house in the family. He wanted, do everything you can to keep the house for the younger generation. And it's just a shame that the house didn't even last but one generation. And so the point of me making this podcast is that when it comes to family and finances, sometimes education is needed to help out the situation. When we're not educated, then we don't know certain things. We are quick to judgment, and I say we because I've known some people personally that have jumped to conclusions, jumped to rush to judgment, and you can get a lot of money real quick. You sell a house, you get the money, but it's a one-time action. And you have to know, if you've never had over $10,000 in your hands, a lot of people haven't even had $10,000 cash in their hand. They don't know what to do with it. If you gave them $50,000, some people wouldn't know what to do with it. Some people would. So you start getting more money and more money, and you don't know what to do with it, then that money's going to go fast. Period. I don't care what you say. If it was a couple $100,000, I stay in California. That can get spent real fast on just paying regular bills, living. Most people do have some type of debt, pay off some debt, man. You right back at where you started at. You won't have any debt, but you'll be right back at where you started at. Versus when you do have a piece of property, try to hold on to it, especially out here. The property value in LA, where I'm at, it has gone up tremendously. People that a few years ago bought a house for $700,000 or $500,000, their house is now worth $700,000. It was some 3-story townhouses around the corner from where I stay, and they were being built. I'll never forget. I went around there, and they wanted like $525,000, probably about 2,000 square feet. Said 3-story new build, and now they want $750 for that same house, and that was probably 3 years ago. And so stuff rises quickly. You can really, gain equity in a house. You can make money off a house with the Airbnb, with, doing, you can rent it out. There's always a chance with that. If you Airbnb it, if you did the Airbnb, you get people in there. Yes, they can tear up the house, more traffic, more different people. But what I found by doing the research is that people are less likely to do it. So my point being that when you have an asset, you try to hold on to it. This particular house is free and clear. There's no debt on it. There's no tax lien. There's no anything on it. It's just it's a house, and like I said, without the education, sometimes things get not tossed by the wayside, because you will, like I said, eventually make money from it, but it's a one-time thing. And, it's a shame that when family can't come together, and when family can't come together, then that's when things can go awry. I know I keep saying, it's like I'm repeating myself, and I wish I could get somebody on, that could back up what I'm saying, because I've known people that's been through this, and I listen to their stories, and I'm like, you shouldn't even have to go through that. Like, why? Like, if my family, decided to sell the house, and they make it whatever for me doing this podcast, ultimately I was going to try to save the house, pay the money that's owed, go back through the house. It's haven't been updated in probably 50 years. So it's very antique looking, probably cost, my estimates, about $200,000 to go back through it. I was prepared to put this money up myself without any help, asking for nobody else. And they wanted me to propose a business plan. It wasn't good enough that I just wanted to save my grandfather's house. They wanted me to actually propose a business plan so they could decide on if they wanted to sell the house or not. I just, my grandfather was a strong-willed man, 5th grade education, came to LA when he was young, worked at Department of Water and Power 25 years, never missed a day, had a janitorial business that he went to every day after work. I used to help him sometimes. And he was a pastor. And he did all this, supporting his family the whole way. And when he died, he left my grandmother a nice nest egg where if she wouldn't have got sick, she never would have had to worry about money at all. Money wouldn't even been a factor. She had enough. He left her with Social Security, retirement, pensions, all that. She was straight. The way that a husband is supposed to leave his wife. His funeral was paid for. Her funeral was paid for. Everything was paid for up front a long time ago. And I really felt bad. I feel bad for him and her because of how hard I know they worked. They never missed a day in 25 years, to go get up. He was at work I think he was had to be there at 6, maybe. And then he'd come home. My grandmother would have food for him. And, okay. Right. As my wife come in and get a water while I'm taping, it's okay. She was thirsty. It's all right. That's the magic of a podcast. So, lost my train of thought here. I was talking about my grandfather and him getting up, going to work at 6 o'clock. Grandmother would have food ready for him when he got home. About 3:30, he'd rest, go back to work. Then he'd come back from that, read some scriptures, study the Bible, go to sleep, and do it all over again. He wasn't a man of like blowing money or nothing like that. He didn't buy expensive clothes, none of that stuff. He didn't do none of that, And it just is a shame. I'm saying all this because it's a shame that what's happening. He wanted his legacy to live on, and it's not. Once the house is sold, there's no meeting place for our family to get together. Period. Pretty much everybody's pretty much their own separate ways now. Past couple of years, only time they get together. Funerals, they've gotten together. My grandmother, we celebrated her 90th birthday. Pretty much everybody came, almost, So that was one time where the family got together, but those events were few and far between. So back, to what this podcast is about, family and finances. If you do have, somebody does have properties or whatever, it is smart to educate yourself. It is smart for everybody involved to educate themselves. Because without it, you can end up in a situation. It was smart that my grandfather put the house in a trust, a living trust. He appointed, my grandmother, head trustee, and then the kids followed, and then eventually it came to me and the rest of my cousins, first cousins that I have. So he was smart with that. So there's no probate taxes. There's nothing like that, but if you just have a will, then to get the house, you still have to, pay certain taxes. The state of California won't their money. I do know that. So I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, man. Like I said, I just wanted to make this. It wasn't going to be long. I wish I had someone, like I said, to talk to about it right now on the podcast, because I really believe that this could make people think about some things. It could make them, maybe they know somebody. Is selling the house the worst thing? It's not the worst thing, possibly, because losing it totally with nothing could be the worst thing. But I do believe that selling a piece of property out here, is not the best. This is not the best thing, this is not the best thing to do. I don't know how you feel about it. And I don't know who's going to listen to this. If anybody's going to listen to it, maybe not, that you might hear this, but I'm in hopes that if somebody is listening, that this makes you think about some stuff. Just for, like I said, I just keep going back to his legacy, and I keep going back to what family means. People say family is just not about blood, and they are right. It's just not about blood. Blood makes you related, but it doesn't necessarily always make you family. That used to be different back in the day when you knew you was, related to somebody that made you family, and that meant something. But in today's time, people so spread out. I grew up where my family was all the way around. They were always here. I had cousins right next door, aunties right next door, and in another house. Like, I grew up around my family, but the way in today's time, it's not like that because of the inflation. Not the inflation. Oh yeah, inflation. Housing costs. So people have to move further away from the inner cities per se. Like I grew up in Venice. My grandmother was in Inglewood. If you're trying to buy a house out there now, you need over $1 million. And if you buy a house for over $1 million, your house note is probably going to be at least about $6,000 a month at minimum. It's a lot of money. Then you got to pay taxes on $1 million house. Then you got to pay insurance on $1 million house. Then you got to pay all the bills on $1 million house. So your monthly overhead could be easy 10 grand once you include all those things every month. And you got maybe a 2,000 square foot house in Inglewood. Maybe. It's just a shame how it is. It's a shame. It's a shame, man. It's heartbreaking because as being a part of a black family, we oftentimes, people don't get a chance to leave anything behind because it was so hard for them. They didn't make smart decisions with their finances. They didn't invest their money because they were uneducated. They were taught, graduate high school, go get a job at the factory, and retire. That's it. Nothing else. Don't dribble outside the lines. Stay in between the lines. It's sad. Super sad. So anyway, I think I'm gonna end it right there. I'm gonna end it right there by saying, don't become a statistic of what society has. You know, it's like the rich and the poor. There's nobody in between. It's either you super rich or you barely making it. And if you're living from check to check, you're poor. There is no middle class anymore. What's the middle class? You still broke. You could be making whatever money. And if you have no money left over at the end of the month when you pay all your bills, what are you? You're poor. Period. Can't take no vacations. You can't go buy you whatever it is that you want to buy because you have to take care of your family. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you work honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I do it. I go to work every day. I have a job, and that means just over broke. Just think about that. And I'll see you next time.